Queen Minji sat on her golden throne and stared at the holographic reports floating before her. Each blue light represented a dying world. Each number meant thousands of her people were sick. The plague had spread to 7 of the 12 worlds. In her empire, the outer colonies were hit the worst. Your Majesty, we need to make a decision soon. General Haniel stood before her throne. His uniform was wrinkled from 3 sleepless days. Dark circles under his eyes showed his worry. The plague is spreading faster than we thought. My ships can barely keep up with the evacuation requests. Minji looked at her most trusted friend. Haniel had served her family for 20 years. He had saved her life twice during the border wars. She trusted him more than anyone in the palace. But even he could not fix this disaster. How bad is it really? Minji asked. She already knew the answer would hurt. Planet Daeon has lost 60% of its population. Busan colony is completely dark. No signals for 3 days now. The outer mining worlds are begging for medicine we don't have. Haniel's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly, and the core worlds are starting to panic. People are demanding we close all spaceports. The doors to the throne room opened with a soft hiss. Commander Sumin walked in quickly. Her intelligence uniform was perfectly neat, but Minji could see the stress in her childhood friend's face. Sumin had grown up in the palace. They had played together as children in the royal gardens. Your Majesty, I have urgent news. Sumin bowed briefly. The Earth diplomatic ship has arrived. They say they have medical supplies and doctors, but there's something else. She paused and looked around the room. I need to speak with you privately, Minji. Waved her hand. The guards and servants left. The room, only she, Haniel, and Suman remained. The queen felt a cold weight in her stomach. More bad news was coming. I've been investigating the plague's origin, Suman said quietly. The pattern of infection is too organized, too planned. This isn't natural, Your Majesty. Someone created this disease. General Haniel stepped forward. Created it. You mean this is a weapon? Yes. And I think I know who. Suman activated her personal tablet. Images appeared in the air above it. Prince Qiang has been meeting with scientists from the old bioweapon program. The one your father shut down 30 years ago. These meetings happened just before the first outbreak. Minji felt the blood drain from her face. Her younger brother wanted her throne. She had always known this. But she never thought he would kill millions of innocent people to get it. Are you certain? She whispered. Not completely. But the evidence is strong. He's been moving money to secret accounts. He's hired mercenaries. And his supporters in the military have been asking strange questions about succession laws. The weight of the crown suddenly felt unbearable. Minji had ruled for 15 years. She'd always tried to be fair and just like her ancestors. Taiyang family had ruled for 3,000 years. Every queen and king before her had protected the empire. Now it was falling apart under her watch. Your Majesty, General Haniel said gently, we need to focus on saving lives first. We can deal with Prince Kyun later. The Earth humans are offering help. Should I let their doctors land? Before Minji could answer, the throne room doors opened again. Prince Kyun walked in with a confident smile. He was younger than Minji by 5 years and had always been more popular with the nobles. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his royal robes were spotless. Dear sister, I hear we have visitors from Earth. Qiang's voice was smooth and friendly, but Mingi noticed how his eyes quickly looked at Suman's tablet before she could turn it off. I think we should be careful about accepting alien help. Our people might see it as weakness. Our people are dying, Minji said coldly. I will accept help from anyone who offers it. Of course. Of course. Only suggest caution. The core worlds are worried about infections spreading here. The nobles are asking questions about emergency powers. Perhaps it's time to consider ... temporary measures. Understood his meaning. Emergency powers would let her ignore the old laws. But they would also make it easier for someone to challenge her rule later. Someone like Kyung. I'll consider all options, she said carefully. Kyung bowed with false respect. I live to serve the crown, sister. He turned and walked out, But his smile never reached his eyes. When he was gone, Suman immediately activated security shields around the room. Now no one could listen to their conversation. "He knows I'm investigating him," she said. "We're running out of time." General Hanyul looked frustrated. "Your Majesty, my ships are stretched thin. If Prince Kyung has military supporters, I don't know if I can protect the outer colonies and watch for traitors at the same time." Minji stood up from her throne and walked to the great window. Outside, she could see the capital city of New Seoul, spreading out below the palace. Millions of people lived there. They trusted her to keep them safe. But how could she protect everyone when she didn't know who to trust? "Bring the Earth Doctor to me," she decided. "I want to meet this human who offers help to strangers." "Your Majesty," Suman said carefully. "If you accept their help, Prince Kyung might use it against you. He could say you're weak, that you can't handle the crisis alone. And if I don't accept their help, more people die while I worry about politics." Mingi turned back to her friends. "I became queen to serve my people, not to keep my crown safe." But even as she said it, Minji felt doubt creeping into her heart. The old laws were clear. A monarch who couldn't protect the empire lost the right to rule. She appeared weak now. Everything her family had built could crumble. 3,000 years of Taiyang rule could end with her. "Set up the meeting with the Earth Doctor," she ordered, "but keep it quiet. And Suman, I want you to find proof about Kyung. Real proof. If my own brother is behind this plague, the people need to know." As her friends left to carry out her orders, Queen Mingi remained at the window. The sun was setting over New Seoul. In a few hours, night would fall over her empire. She wondered if the dawn would bring hope or disaster. Far below, she could see lights starting to flicker on in the city. Each light represented a family. Children going to bed, parents working late, grandparents telling old stories. All of them depending on her to make the right choice. But what was the right choice? Save the outer colonies and risk losing everything to her ambitious brother, or sacrifice the distant worlds to preserve the core of her empire? For the first time in her reign, Queen Minji wasn't sure she knew the answer. Dr. Juan Park stepped off the Earth transport ship and breathed the recycled air of the Valerian space station. Around her, alien workers moved with urgent purpose. Their blue-tinted skin and tall frames made them look elegant even in their hurry, but she could see the fear in their large dark eyes. The plague was real, and it was spreading. "Dr. Park, welcome to the Valerian Empire." A young officer approached her. His translator device made his words sound flat and mechanical. "I'm Lieutenant Taiho. The Queen will see you soon. But first, you must understand our customs." Juan nodded politely. She had studied Valerian culture during the long journey from Earth. She knew they valued respect and tradition above almost everything else. But she also knew that sick people needed help more than they needed proper manners. "Lieutenant, how many medical facilities do you have on the outer worlds?" she asked while they walked through the station corridors. Taiho's expression became sad. "Head doctor, past tense." "Most outer colonies have gone dark. No communications for days. The Queen has ordered all ships to maintain safe distance." Kiwan stopped walking. Safe distance. "What about the people still alive on those worlds? The risk of spreading infection is too great. The Queen must protect the core worlds. It is her duty." "Her duty is to protect all her people," Jawan said firmly. Several Valerian workers nearby looked at her with surprise. Humans were not supposed to question royal decisions. Lieutenant Taiho looked uncomfortable. "Please keep such thoughts private." "Dr. Park, the Queen is under great pressure. Prince Kung's supporters say she is already too weak to rule effectively." They continued walking toward the palace transport. Guan thought about the medical supplies in her ship's cargo hold. Advanced medicines that could slow the plague spread. Portable hospitals that could save thousands of lives. All useless. If they couldn't reach the sick people, the royal palace floated in space above the capital world like a glittering jewel. Its golden walls reflected the light of 3 suns. Inside, servants hurried through hallways that seemed designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Queen Minji received her in a small private room rather than the grand throne hall. The Valerian queen looked tired and much older than her 40 years. Her crown sat crooked on her head as if she had forgotten she was wearing it. "Dr. Park, thank you for coming so far to help us," Mingi said in careful English. "But I must ask, why does Earth care about our problems?" Guan had expected this question. "Your Majesty, suffering has no nationality. When people are sick and dying, helping them is not political. It's simply human." "Human," the Queen repeated the word slowly. "Your species is still young compared to ours. Perhaps that makes you more optimistic. Or maybe it makes us more willing to try new solutions," Guan replied. "Your Majesty, I've studied the plague reports. My team believes we can develop a treatment. But we need access to the affected areas." Queen Minji's hands tensed in her lap. "That is impossible. The outer worlds are quarantined. I cannot risk the infection spreading to our core systems." "With respect, Your Majesty, quarantine only works if you can contain the disease. But this plague is already spreading through your empire. Isolation won't stop it. Only treatment will." The Queen stood up and walked to a window overlooking her. "Capital City. You don't understand our situation, Dr. Park. I have enemies who wait for any sign of weakness. If I appear to lose control, they will challenge my right to rule. 3,000 years of stable government could end." Juan felt a surge of frustration. She had seen this before on other worlds. Leaders who valued their power more than their people's lives. But she kept her voice calm and respectful. "Your Majesty, in my experience, people judge leaders by their actions during crisis. History remembers those who chose compassion over comfort." Before the Queen could respond, Commander Suman entered the room quickly. She whispered something urgent in the Queen's ear. Minji's face went pale. "Dr. Park, I must cut our meeting short. There has been a development." The Queen's voice was tight with stress. "Lieutenant Taiho will show you to your quarters. We will continue our discussion tomorrow." As Jiwan left the royal chambers, she noticed groups of soldiers moving through the palace corridors. Their weapons were ready, and their faces were grim. Something was happening beyond the plague crisis. That evening, in her assigned quarters, Giwan received a coded message on her personal communicator. The signal was weak and scrambled, but she recognized the sender. It was from Captain Yunishin, her military escort, who had remained with the Earthship. "Dr. Park, we have a problem. Someone tried to sabotage our medical supplies. Security stopped them, but barely. Also, I'm picking up military movements in the outer systems. Ships moving away from the quarantine zones. It looks like they're abandoning people." Guan stared at the message for a long time. Then she made a decision that she knew could end her diplomatic career. She activated her emergency beacon and sent a message back to Captain Shin. "Begin emergency medical deployment. Ignore the quarantine. Orders. We're going to help those people whether the Queen approves or not." The next morning, Giwan requested another meeting with Queen Minji. But instead of the Queen, General Hanyol came to see her. His military uniform was dusty, and his boots were worn. He looked like a man who had been working without sleep for days. "Dr. Parker, Majesty is dealing with urgent state business. I am here to discuss your medical mission. General, I need permission to take my medical team to the outer colonies. People are dying while we waste time with politics." Hanyol looked around the room carefully, then activated a privacy shield. "Doctor, what I'm about to tell you must remain secret. The Queen has decided to sacrifice the outer worlds to save the core systems. She believes it's the only way to preserve the Empire." Giwan felt sick to her stomach. "Sacrifice them? You mean abandon millions of people?" "Yes, and I have been ordered to enforce this decision. Any ship that tries to reach the quarantine zones will be turned back or destroyed. And what do you think about these orders, General?" Hanyol was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was full of pain. "I think some orders are wrong, even when they come from the throne. I became a soldier to protect people, not to abandon them." "Then help me," Giwan said urgently. "My ship has medical supplies that could save thousands of lives. Your people don't have to die just because politicians are afraid. If I disobey the Queen's orders, I will be branded a traitor. My career will end. My family will be dishonored. If you follow orders, innocent people will die. What matters more, General? Your reputation or their lives? General Hanyul stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, plague victims were waiting for help that might never come. Somewhere out there, his own soldiers were following orders they knew were wrong. There's a supply convoy leaving for the border systems tonight, he said quietly. If a small Earth medical ship happened to join that convoy, and if that ship happened to get separated in hyperspace and accidentally reach the quarantine worlds, well, accidents happen in wartime. Quan smiled for the first time since arriving in Valerian space. Thank you, General. You're a good man. I hope history agrees with you, Dr. Park, because after tonight, I suspect I'll be an unemployed good man. As evening fell over the Valerian capital, two very different plans began to unfold. In the royal palace, Prince Kyung met with his supporters to discuss taking emergency powers from his sister. And in the military docks, Dr. Jawan Park prepared to risk everything to save people her own government had abandoned. The plague had created more than a medical crisis. It had created a test of character that would determine the future of an entire empire. Queen Minji had not slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of people on the outer worlds, people she had chosen to abandon. The royal doctor said her illness came from stress, but she knew the truth. Guilt was eating her alive from the inside. Dr. Giwan Park knocked softly on the queen's private chamber door. She carried a small medical bag and wore the simple white coat of an Earth physician. The royal guards had tried to stop her, but Queen Minji had given permission for the human doctor to treat her personally. Your Majesty, how are you feeling today? Giwan asked as she entered the richly decorated room. Like a coward, Mingi answered. Honestly, she sat in a chair by the window, still wearing her nightgown, even though it was afternoon. Her crown lay forgotten on a nearby table. Giwan sat down across from her. Tell me about your dreams. I see children calling for help. I see empty cities where millions once lived. I see my ancestors looking down at me with shame. Minji's voice broke slightly. I was supposed to protect them all. Instead, I chose to save some and abandon others. Why did you make that choice? Minji looked surprised by the direct question. Most people, especially foreigners, never dared to challenge her decision so openly. Because a dead empire protects no one, she said, repeating the words her advisors had told her. If the plague reaches our core worlds, everything collapses. It's better to save what we can than lose everything. Is that what you believe, or what others told you to believe? The question hung in the air between them. Jawan waited patiently while the queen struggled with thoughts she had been avoiding for days. I don't know anymore, Minji whispered. I used to be so certain about everything. The crown gave me purpose and direction. Now it feels like a weight that's crushing me. Your Majesty, may I tell you about my homeworld? Minji nodded, grateful for any distraction from her own thoughts. Earth has faced many plagues throughout our history. Millions died from diseases we couldn't cure, but we learned something important. Running away from suffering never makes it disappear. It only makes the suffering worse. The only real solution is to face the problem together. Easy words for someone who doesn't wear a crown, Minji said bitterly. You're right. I don't understand the burden of ruling millions of people. But I do understand the burden of making life and death decisions. Every day in my work, I choose who gets medicine first when supplies are limited. The difference is, I never abandon anyone completely. Queen Minji stood up and walked to her window. Below, she could see the capital city busy with normal life. People going to work, children playing in parks, families enjoying meals together. All because she had chosen to protect them instead of the outer colonies. Dr. Park, what would you do if you were me? I would ask myself what kind of leader I want to be remembered as? Someone who saved her favorite children? Or someone who died trying to save them all? Before Minji could respond, urgent knocking came from the door. Commander Suman entered without waiting for permission. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. Your Majesty, we have a crisis. Prince Kung has moved his supporters into key positions throughout the palace. Royal guards loyal to you are being reassigned or arrested on false charges. Queen Minji felt her blood turn cold. A coup? He's moving against me now? It appears so. And there's more bad news. I finally found proof about the plague's origin. Suman activated her tablet, showing genetic analysis reports. Prince Kyung definitely created this disease. But Your Majesty, I may have waited too long to tell you. What do you mean? He knows I've been investigating him. Security forces raided my office an hour ago. They're looking for me now. Suman's voice was tight with fear. I think he plans to eliminate anyone who threatens his claim to the throne. Dr. Juwon Park listened to this conversation with growing alarm. Political coups were dangerous for everyone, but especially for foreign diplomats, who might be seen as enemies or spies. Commander Suman, do you have a way to get this evidence to the public? She asked. Not anymore. Kyung controls the communication networks now. Any broadcast I try to make will be blocked or twisted to make me look like the traitor. Queen Minji sank back into her chair. Everything was falling apart at once. The plague, the abandoned colonies, and now her own brother stealing her throne. 3,000 years of Taiyang rule ending because she had been too weak to make the right choices. Your Majesty, Dr. Park said quietly, it's not too late to change course. What do you mean? Confess publicly that abandoning the outer colonies was wrong? Promise to send help immediately. Show your people that you choose compassion over politics. It might win back their support. And if it doesn't, if they decide I'm too weak to rule, at least you'll fall doing the right thing instead of living with the wrong choice. Commander Suman looked between the Queen and the human doctor. Your Majesty, Dr. Park might be right. The people are starting to ask questions about the quarantine. Refugees who escaped the outer worlds are telling stories about human doctors helping while our own government ignored their calls for aid. This was news to Queen Minji. What stories? General Haniel's convoy accidentally brought Earth medical teams to several quarantine worlds. They've been working for days to treat plague victims. The refugees say human doctors stayed to help while Valerian officials fled. Dr. Park tried to hide her relief. Captain Yuna Shin and Dr. Minho Choi had successfully reached the outer colonies. People were being saved even while politicians argued about protocol. The humans made me look like a coward, Queen Minji said, but her voice held more admiration than anger. Double quotes, no, Your Majesty. They made you look like someone who still has time to choose courage over fear. Suddenly, the palace alarm systems began. Wailing, red lights flashed in the corridors outside. Commander Suman quickly activated her communication device. Report, she ordered. Commander Prince Kyung's forces have taken the throne room and the communication center. They're demanding all palace staff swear loyalty to the new government. Anyone who refuses is being arrested. Suman closed the communication and looked at her queen with sad eyes. It's happening, Your Majesty. The coup is in motion. Queen Minji stood up slowly and walked to her dressing room. She came back. She was wearing her royal robes, and her crown sat firmly on her head. Commander, do we have any forces still loyal to the rightful government? General Haniel's fleet is still in the outer systems? But even if we could contact him, it would take days for his ships to return. And what about our human friends? Minji looked at Dr. Park. Does your Captain Shin have any military experience? Guan was surprised by the question. She's a decorated combat veteran, Your Majesty. Why do you ask? Because I just realized something important. My brother created this plague to make me look weak and incompetent. He sacrificed millions of lives for his own ambition. If the people knew the truth, they would never accept him as their ruler. But how can we tell them the truth if he controls all communications? Queen Minji smiled for the first time in days. It was not a happy smile, but it was determined. Park, your people have already shown they're willing to risk everything to help strangers. They be willing to help us fight for justice? Your Majesty, humans have a saying. When evil succeeds, it's usually because good people do nothing. We won't do nothing. Commander Suman moved to the window and looked out at the palace courtyard. Prince Kung's soldiers were everywhere, but they moved with the uncertainty of people following orders they didn't fully understand. If we're going to act, we need to do it soon, she said. Once Kyun consolidates power, it will be much harder to challenge him. Queen Minji walked to her private safe and removed several items. Official government seals, genetic identification cards, and most importantly, the ancient crown of the first Taiyang emperor, the crown that proved legitimate rule. Then we don't wait, she decided. Dr. Park, can you contact your ship? Yes, but it won't be easy with the communication blocks. We need to coordinate with General Haniel and get the truth to our people. My brother wants to rule through fear and lies. Let's show him that courage and truth are stronger. As the three women began planning their resistance, none of them knew that Prince Kung was already preparing his final, most terrible move. The bioweapon that had started this crisis was about to become even more deadly. Dr. Minho Choi worked frantically in the makeshift laboratory on Daeon Colony. Around him, human and Valerian medical staff rushed to process blood samples and synthesize medicine. The cure was almost ready. After 5 days of non-stop research, they had finally cracked the genetic code of Prince Kyun's bioweapon. Dr. Choi, we're getting reports of incoming ships. Captain Unishin called from the communication station. They're not broadcasting friendly signals. Oh. Minho looked up from his microscope. His eyes were red from exhaustion, and his hands shook from too much caffeine. But the formula glowing on his computer screen represented hope for millions of dying. People, how long do we have? He asked. Maybe 20 minutes before they reach orbit. 30 minutes before ground forces arrive. That's not enough time to finish the production run. Minho stared at the cure formula on his screen. He had worked so hard to save these people. Now Prince Kung's forces would destroy everything. Before the medicine could help anyone, Captain Shin moved to his side. Doctor, we need to evacuate now. My ship can get the research team to safety. What about the patients in the medical centers? About the cure formula? We can rebuild the cure somewhere else. We can't rebuild you if you're dead. Minho made a decision that would change everything. He began uploading the cure data to every communication satellite he could reach. Earth databases, Valerian military networks, even civilian entertainment channels. If Prince Kyun wanted to destroy the cure, he would have to destroy the entire galaxy's communication system. Captain, get everyone else to the evacuation ships. I'm staying to make sure the upload completes. Doctor, that's suicide. Those soldiers won't take prisoners. And make sure my sacrifice counts for something. Minho smiled sadly. Tell Dr. Park that humans don't give up on people. Even when it costs us everything, the attack came faster than expected. Prince Kung's forces didn't bother with warnings or surrender demands. They simply began bombing the medical facilities from orbit. Minho felt the building shake around him as explosions lit up the sky. His computer showed the upload was 70% complete. Then 80%. The power flickered as another bomb hit nearby. 90%. The ceiling began to collapse. 95%. Dr. Minho Choi died protecting a cure that would save millions of people he had never met. His last act was pressing the final upload button as the laboratory collapsed around him. Captain Yuna Shin received the upload completion signal. Just as her rescue ship lifted off from the burning colony, tears ran down her face as she watched the medical center disappear in flames below. Another good person had died because politicians cared more about power than people. But Minho's sacrifice was not wasted. Within hours, the cure formula spread across the galaxy faster than Prince Kyun could stop it. Every medical facility, every university, every hospital now had the information they needed to synthesize the antidote. On the core worlds, General Haniel received the cure data on his personal communicator. He was officially branded a traitor now for helping the human medical mission, but he didn't care about his career anymore. He cared about the choice between right and wrong. All ships, this is General Haniel, he broadcast to his fleet. We have the cure for the plague. Every ship with medical facilities will begin production immediately. Every ship with weapons will prepare for battle. We're going home to save our people and stop a murderer from taking the throne. His words reached not just his own loyal forces, but also ships serving under Prince Kung's command. Many of those crews had family on the outer worlds. They'd watched their loved ones die while following orders to maintain quarantine.
Oh, money.
Learning that Prince Kung had created the plague that killed their families changed everything. Admiral Taoan commanded one of Prince Kung's largest battle groups. He had served the royal family for 30 years and had never questioned an order. But when he learned the truth about the plague, something broke inside him. "This is Admiral Taiwan to all ships in Battle Group 7, he announced. "I have new orders. We are no longer serving a prince who murders his own people. We are joining General Hanyul to restore Queen Minji to her rightful throne." Similar declarations came from commanders throughout the fleet. Prince Kunyang had thought controlling the palace would give him control of the military. But he had forgotten that soldiers have families too, families that his bioweapon had destroyed. Back on the capital world, Queen Minji hid in the palace's ancient tunnels with Commander Suman and Dr. Ji-Won Park. The underground passages had been built centuries ago as escape routes during wartime. Now they served as headquarters for a resistance movement. "Your Majesty, we're receiving coded messages." From General Hanul, Suman reported, "His fleet is returning to the core systems." But he also reports that Dr. Choi died protecting the cure formula. Dr. Park closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Minho had been her student before becoming her colleague. He had joined the mission because he believed in helping people regardless of their species or politics. Now he was gone. "His sacrifice won't be forgotten," she said quietly, "long before the cure reaches the outer colonies." Production has already begun on 12 different worlds. The first medical supplies should reach plague victims within hours. Queen Minji felt a strange mixture of hope and sorrow. The cure would save her people, but it had cost a good man his life. And the civil war was just beginning. "Commander, what's Prince Kung's position?" "He's fortified himself in the throne room with his most loyal supporters. About 200 soldiers who don't know the truth about the plague yet. He's demanding that all government officials swear loyalty to him as the new emperor." "And what are they saying?" "Most are refusing, or asking to speak with you directly before accepting any change in government." This gave Minji an idea. If she could appear publicly and tell the truth about both the plague and her own mistakes, the people might choose forgiveness over revenge. But reaching the public meant getting past Kyun's forces. "Dr. Park, does your ship have any stealth capabilities?" "Captain Shin's transport has some electronic countermeasures." "Why?" "Because I'm going to do something that queens aren't supposed to do. I'm going to admit I was wrong and ask my people to forgive me." Commander Suman looked worried. "Your Majesty, that's incredibly dangerous. If Prince Kyun captures you, he could execute you as a traitor to justify his rule. And if I hide in these tunnels while my people suffer, I'll be a traitor to everything my family has stood for." Dr. Park understood the Queen's reasoning. On Earth, leaders who admitted mistakes and fought to correct them often gained more respect than those who pretended to be perfect. "Your Majesty, human history teaches us that courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're afraid." Queen Mingi smiled at the human doctor. "Then it's time for me to be courageous." As they prepared to leave the safety of the tunnels, none of them knew that Prince Kyun had one more terrible surprise waiting. All the original plague had been just a test. The real bioweapon was designed to kill not just the outer colonies, but every person in the galaxy who refused to bow to his rule. But they also didn't know that. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the darkest moments. Dr. Minho Choi's death had given them the cure. Now it was time to discover what Queen Minji's courage could accomplish. Prince Kyung stood in the throne room surrounded by his remaining loyal guards. Reports kept coming in about military units abandoning his cause. Ships that had sworn loyalty to him were now joining General Hanyul's rebel fleet. Perfectly. Planned coup was falling apart. "Your Highness, we should consider negotiating a surrender," advised General Wujin, his chief military supporter. "The people are turning against us." "Maybe we can make a deal with Queen Minji? Surrender?" Kun's voice was filled with rage. "I didn't kill millions of people just to give up when victory was within reach." He walked to the throne and sat down heavily. The crown looked wrong on his head, too big and somehow fake. "Activate the Omega Protocol." General Wujin went pale. "Your Highness, the Omega weapon isn't ready for deployment." The test results. showed it could kill entire planetary populations. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Kyung's eyes held a madness that terrified even his own supporters. If I can't rule a grateful empire, I'll rule over ashes. Any world that refuses to accept me as emperor will be sterilized completely. But Your Highness, that includes the core worlds, your own people. They stopped being my people when they chose my weak sister over their rightful king. Known too. Prince Kwang, Dr. Jiwon Park, was listening to every word he spoke. Captain Unishin had managed to place tiny surveillance devices throughout the palace during the confusion of the coup. We have to stop him, Dr. Park said urgently to Queen Minji and Commander Suman. They were hiding in an abandoned maintenance tunnel just below the throne room. If he releases that weapon, it won't just kill Valerians, it will kill every living thing on those worlds. Queen Minji felt sick. Her brother had moved beyond ambition into pure evil. How do we reach him? The throne room is surrounded by his guards. I have an idea, Commander Suman said, but it's extremely dangerous. Dr. Park, you're still officially a diplomatic guest. You have the right to request audience with whoever claims to be the ruler. Kyung can't refuse without looking weak to his own supporters. You want me to walk in there alone and negotiate with a madman? Not alone, and not to negotiate. Suman activated her portable hologram projector. This device can broadcast to every communication network in the Empire. If you can keep Kyun talking long enough, we can show the entire galaxy what kind of monster he really is. Dr. Park understood the plan. Kung's ego would make him want to justify his actions. If she could get him to confess to creating the plague and threatening genocide, no one would ever support his claim to the throne. What about the Omega weapon? How do we stop him from using it? Queen Minji pulled out a small device that looked like a jewelry box. This contains the master override codes for all royal bioweapon systems. My father gave it to me when I became queen, with strict orders to use it only if our family's weapons were ever turned against our own people. Will it work? We're about to find out. Dr. Park walked through the palace corridors toward the throne room. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought it might explode, behind her hidden in the shadows. Queen Mingi and Commander Suman prepared their equipment. The guards at the throne room doors looked surprised to see the human doctor approaching. She held up her diplomatic credentials and spoke in her most official voice. I am Dr. Jiwon Park, representative of the Earth government. I request immediate audience with whoever currently claims authority over the Valerian Empire. The guards looked at each other uncertainly. One of them spoke into his communicator. After a moment, the massive doors opened. Prince Kyung sat on the golden throne, wearing the crown that had belonged to his family for thousands of years. But something was wrong with the picture. The crown seemed to reject him, sitting crooked no matter how he adjusted it. His royal robes were wrinkled and stained with sweat. Dr. Park, how nice of you to visit. I assume you're here to negotiate Earth's surrender to my new empire? Actually, I'm here to understand why you created a plague that killed millions of innocent people. Kyung's supporters looked shocked. This wasn't the diplomatic conversation they had expected, but the prince just smiled coldly. You humans are so direct. I like that about your species. Yes, I created the plague. It was necessary to remove my weak sister from power and establish proper leadership. Proper leadership that abandons entire worlds to die. Leadership that makes hard choices for the greater good, something my sister never understood. Dr. Park walked closer to the throne. Hidden cameras in her clothing were broadcasting everything to Commander Suman's equipment. And now, you plan to use an even deadlier weapon against your own people? Prince Kyung stood up from the throne. His madness was clear now to everyone in the room. The Omega Protocol will cleanse this empire of weakness and rebellion. Any world that refuses to bow to their emperor will be purified. It's better than the chaos of democracy or the softness of my sister's rule. Several of his own guards began backing away from the throne. They had signed up to serve a new government, not to commit genocide. Your Highness General Wu Jin said, carefully perhaps we should reconsider the Omega deployment? Are you questioning my orders, General? I'm questioning the wisdom of destroying our own empire to save it. Prince Kyung pulled out a weapon and pointed it at his own supporter. Anyone else want to question their emperor? The throne room fell silent, except for the sound of the prince's heavy breathing. Dr. Park could see that several guards were quietly moving their hands toward their own weapons. "Prince Kyung," she said softly, "what do you think your ancestors would say about your choices?" "My ancestors were conquerors who built this empire through strength and determination. They would understand that sometimes a ruler must be ruthless to preserve order. Or maybe they would see a frightened man who chose murder over the hard work of actual leadership." Kung's face turned red with rage. He swung his weapon toward Dr. Park, but before he could fire, Queen Minji stepped out of the shadows. "Brother, enough." The real queen wore simple clothes instead of royal robes. Her crown was back in the tunnels where she had left it. But somehow she looked more royal than the man sitting on her throne. "Minji, how did you get past my guards?" "The same way I learned to rule, by remembering that power comes from serving people, not from threatening them." Queen Minji held up the bioweapon override device. "This ends now, Kyun. No more plagues. No more genocide. No more shame brought on our family name." Prince Kyun realized his game was over. The whole empire had heard his confession, his own. Supporters were turning against him. His ultimate weapon could be neutralized with the press of a button. "If I can't rule, then no one can," he screamed, and activated a personal explosive device hidden in his robes. "Captain," Yunishin tackled Dr. Park to the ground just as the explosion filled the throne room with fire and smoke. When the air cleared, Prince Kyung was gone. His madness had finally consumed him completely. Queen Minji stood in the ruins of her throne room, covered in dust, but alive. Round her, the guards who had survived were kneeling in respect to their rightful ruler. "Jir, Majesty," General Wujian said, his voice shaking, "we were wrong to follow the prince. We beg your forgiveness." "The time for begging is over," Minji replied. "The time for healing has begun." Dr. Park stood up slowly, helped by Captain Shin. "Your Majesty, the bioweapon laboratories need to be secured immediately. Already done." Commander Suman entered the destroyed throne room with a team of technicians. All Omega Protocol facilities have been shut down using the override codes. The galaxy is safe. News of Prince Kyung's death and confession spread throughout the empire. Something unexpected happened. Instead of celebrating the end of the crisis, people began asking harder questions. How had one man gained so much power? How had the government been willing to abandon entire worlds? What changes were needed to prevent this from happening again? Queen Minji realized that winning the war against her brother was only the beginning. Now came the much harder task of earning back her people's trust and building a government that truly served everyone, but she wouldn't have to do it alone. She had learned that the best leadership comes not from ancient bloodlines or royal traditions, but from the simple human values of courage, compassion, and the willingness to admit when you're wrong. 6 months after Prince Kyung's death, Dr. Giwan Park stood on the observation deck of the new medical station orbiting Daeon Colony. Below her, the planet that had once been a graveyard was showing signs of life again. Cities were being rebuilt. Farms were producing food. Children were playing in streets that had been empty for so long. "The recovery is going better than we hoped," said Dr. Yoonbi Kim, the young Valerian doctor who had become Park's closest colleague. "The cure has eliminated the plague completely, but the emotional wounds are taking longer to heal." One nodded. She had seen this before on other worlds. Physical diseases could be cured with medicine, but trauma and loss required a different kind of treatment. How's the queen adjusting to her new role? Dr. Kim looked through the observation window at a small figure working in the colony's main hospital. Former Queen Mingi wore the simple white coat of a medical volunteer. She spent her days treating patients and learning basic medical skills from human and Valerian doctors. She struggles with guilt every day, but she's learning that helping people heal is more satisfying than ruling over them. It had been Minji's own choice to give up the throne. After Prince Kyung's confession was broadcast across the empire, she had appeared before the Galactic Council to tell the complete truth about her own failures. She had admitted to abandoning the outer colonies. She had confessed that fear had made her choose political safety over moral courage. But instead of demanding punishment, she had asked for the chance to serve her people in a different way. The crown would pass to a democratically elected government. The old royal system would end with her. She would spend the rest of her life working to repair the damage her family's rule had caused. "Dr. Park, we have a visitor," Captain Yunishin announced as she entered the observation deck. Behind her walked a man in the blue uniform of the new Valerian Republic's Prime Minister. General Han Yol looked older than his years, but his eyes held the satisfaction of a man who had chosen the right side of history. The former military commander had been elected as the first democratic leader of the Valerian people. Prime Minister, Dr. Park, bowed respectfully. "What brings you all the way out to the outer colonies?" "Wanted to see the progress for myself. And I wanted to ask you a question." Haniel looked serious. "Dr. Park, would you consider staying permanently, not as a diplomatic representative, but as director of the new Galactic Medical Corps?" Giwan was surprised by the offer. "Prime Minister, I'm honored. But wouldn't it be better to have a Valerian lead this organization? The Medical Corps will serve all species, not just Valerians. We need someone who understands that healing has no nationality. Someone who proved that helping strangers is more important than following rules." Before she could answer, Commander Suman entered the room. She now served as Secretary of Defense for the New Republic, responsible for making sure the military would never again be used against the people it was supposed to protect. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Suman said. "But I wanted to give you this." She handed Dr. Park a small medal made of simple metal. "It's the New Republic's highest civilian honor. For Dr. Minho Choi, posthumously. And for you, for showing us that courage comes in many forms." Dr. Park accepted the medal with tears in her eyes. Minho would have been embarrassed by the attention, but proud that his sacrifice had led to lasting change. "There's something else," Suman continued. "We're building a memorial on New Seoul, not just for Dr. Choi, but for all the plague victims who died because of political failures. The inscription will read, 'In memory of those we failed to save, and in promise to those we will never abandon.'" "That sounds perfect," Kwan said softly. Later that evening, Dr. Park walked through the rebuilt sections of Daeon Colony's main. City Valerian families were eating dinner in restaurants that had been empty ruins just months ago. Human and Valerian children played together in parks, switching between languages without thinking about it. She stopped at a small clinic where former Queen Minji was finishing her shift. The woman who had once ruled 12 star systems was now learning to change bandages and comfort frightened patients. "Your Majesty," Dr. Park said, using the old title out of habit. "Just Minji, please. I'm not a queen anymore. I'm not sure I ever really was one. You were a queen when it mattered most. When you chose to tell the truth, even though it cost you everything." Minji looked tired but peaceful. "Dr. Park, do you ever regret coming here? Your involvement in our civil war could have destroyed your career." "Never. Some things are more important than careers. And I learned something important from your people." "What's that?" "That loyalty and legacy aren't the same thing. True loyalty means serving something bigger than yourself. True legacy means leaving the world better than." "You found it." Minji smiled. "That sounds like something a human would say. Maybe that's because humans have learned that survival depends on cooperation, not domination." They walked together through the evening streets. Around them, the sounds of normal life filled the air. Families talking, children laughing, friends sharing meals. All the simple human experiences that made life worth living. "Dr. Park, will you accept Prime Minister Haniel's offer? Will you stay and help us build the medical corps?" Juan looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its journey through space. Her home world would always be part of who she was. But home wasn't just a place you came from. It was also a place where you were needed. "Yes, I'll stay. There's still a lot of healing to do." As they reached the colony's central square, they found hundreds of people gathered around a simple memorial. It was just a stone column with names carved into it. The names of plague victims who had died while politicians played games with their lives. But at the base of the memorial, fresh flowers were placed every day, not just from Valerian survivors, but from human medical workers who had never met the victims but honored their memory anyway. Prime Minister Henyul stood before the memorial giving a speech to the gathered crowd. We cannot bring back those we lost, he said, but we can promise that their deaths will not be forgotten. We can promise that never again will politics matter more than people. We can promise that the words "I was just following orders" will never again be an excuse for abandoning the innocent. The crowd was silent as his words echoed across the square. Then slowly, people began to speak the names carved on the memorial. Valerian voices mixed with human voices, honoring the dead in a dozen different languages. Dr. Park felt Captain Yuna Shin come up beside her. "It's beautiful," Shin said quietly. "I've never seen anything like it." "What do you mean?" "It's a species that barely knew each other 6 months ago, now mourning together like family." Jiwan thought about that. In a way, they had become family. Not through blood or politics, but through shared suffering and shared hope. "Captain, what will you do now? Will you return to Earth?" "Actually, I've been offered a position training the New Republic's peacekeeping forces, teaching them that military strength should protect people, not governments." "And you'll accept?" Captain Shin looked around at the memorial ceremony. Valerian children were placing drawings at the base of the column. Human medics were helping elderly survivors find seats. Former enemies were working together to honor the past and build the future. How could I leave now? This is where the real work is happening. As the ceremony ended and people began to return to their homes, Dr. Park stayed behind with Minji. They sat on a bench facing the memorial, watching the last light of day fade into darkness. "Minji, do you think we've really changed anything? Or will people forget these lessons once the crisis passes?" The former queen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice held a wisdom that had been purchased with great pain. "Dr. Park, every generation has to learn these truths for themselves. We can't guarantee that future leaders will be better than we were, but we can show them what's possible when people choose courage over comfort, service over power, and love over fear." Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was slowly healing from wounds that had been centuries in the making. It would take time to build a truly just society. There would be setbacks and failures along the way. But on this night, in this place, 2 species that had almost destroyed each other were instead choosing to build something better together. And sometimes that's all the hope anyone needs too. Keep working for a brighter tomorrow. The memorial stood silent in the darkness, its carved names bearing witness to the price of political failure. But around it, the lights of a rebuilt city promised that some lessons once learned are never forgotten. And in the morning, human and Valerian children would wake up in a galaxy where helping strangers was considered normal, where admitting mistakes was seen as strength, and where the most important question any leader could ask was not, "How do I keep power?" but "How do I serve?" That was the real legacy Queen Mingi had chosen. Not the preservation of an ancient bloodline, but the creation of a future where bloodlines mattered less than the blood, sweat, and tears people were willing to share with each other.